The morning light poured into the Hawthorne mansion like liquid gold, glinting off polished marble floors and the mirrored vases lined with fresh peonies. Lara Hawthorne stood at the nursery door, fingers grazing the smooth white wood, imagining the sound of soft baby breaths that would soon fill this space. Her satin robe swayed gently as she stepped inside. The nursery was almost ready. A soft cream carpet, a crib draped with a delicate lace canopy, and a row of tiny sneakers neatly lined on the shelf. She lifted one pair, pale blue, impossibly small, and smiled. Today was the day she'd see her baby again. The 20-week ultrasound. Her heart swelled at the thought of Damien beside her, watching the grainy black and white screen, hearing their child's heartbeat. He had promised he'd be there this time, unlike the last appointment he missed for an urgent meeting. The shrill buzz of her phone broke the moment. She grabbed it quickly from the dresser, expecting a sweet good morning from her husband, Lara. His voice was clipped, businesslike. No greeting. She sat down on the edge of the bed. "Damien, where are you? Your flight got in last night, didn't it?" There was a pause, and in the background she could hear the hum of traffic, muffled. Voices. "I'm still in Singapore. I won't make it today." Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Still, you said you were coming back for this." "It's the ultrasound, Damien." "Our babies. I know what it is," he interrupted, his tone flat. "Something came up. A deal I can't walk away from." She blinked rapidly, as if that could stop the sting behind her eyes. "You've missed dinner, anniversaries, birthdays. But this, you promised." Another pause. The kind of pause that told her he was already looking at another screen, replying to another email. "Lara, I have to go." And then the line went dead. For a long moment, she sat there, phone in hand, staring at nothing. She felt the walls closing in, the gold leaf frames, the perfect flowers, the sunlight. Everything was beautiful and suffocating at once. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach. "It's just you and me, baby," she whispered. The low purr of an engine outside drew her gaze. A black sedan pulled up to the front steps, its windows tinted, so dark they swallowed the morning light. Her stomach tightened. The driver stepped out first, tall, in a pressed black suit. Then Catherine Hawthorne emerged, elegant in a charcoal coat, a string of pearls at her throat. Damien's mother rarely came unannounced. Her visits were orchestrated, planned, and always preceded by a polite phone call from her assistant. Lara went downstairs, smoothing her robe, trying to school her expression into something neutral. "Catherine," she greeted, forcing a small smile as the older woman stepped into the foyer. "My dear." Catherine's lips brushed Lara's cheek, but her grip on Lara's arms was firm, almost possessive. "I thought I'd take you to your appointment today. It's important to keep these things on schedule." "That's very kind, but I already have a driver, I insist." Catherine's eyes, sharp and assessing, flicked briefly to Lara's stomach before she released her. "We'll take my car. It's safer." Lara almost asked, but Catherine was already gliding toward the door, her heels clicking against the marble. The sedan's interior smelled faintly of leather and Catherine's expensive perfume. The windows made the outside world seem distant, muted. As they pulled away from the mansion, Lara tried to make small talk. The nursery, the baby's kicks, but Catherine's responses were short, distracted. Halfway down the main road, the sedan slowed, turning unexpectedly into a side street lined with tall oaks. Lara frowned. "This isn't the way to the clinic." "We're making a quick stop," Catherine said smoothly, her gaze fixed ahead. The stop was a low, discreet building with frosted glass doors and no sign. Lara's unease deepened when she saw who came out to greet Catherine. Edmund Price, the family's longtime attorney. He smiled faintly at Lara. "Mrs. Hawthorne, lovely to see you." Catherine stepped aside with him, speaking in low tones Lara couldn't catch, though she thought she heard her own name, and words like papers and before she finds out. Her heart gave an uneasy thud. Minutes later, Catherine returned. "To the car, all done. Let's continue." Lara nodded slowly, but her mind was racing. Why was the lawyer here? What did "before she finds out" mean? The sedan rolled forward again, the city blurring past. Lara glanced at the clock on the dashboard. If they didn't hurry, they'd be late for the ultrasound. But then Catherine leaned forward to the driver. Change of plans. Go to Brookhaven. Brookhaven. Lara's pulse quickened. That wasn't anywhere near the clinic. She turned to Catherine, searching her face. "What's going on?" Catherine's lips curved in a faint, unreadable smile. "You'll understand soon, my dear. Everything I do is for the baby." Lara looked out the window as the city melted into the quiet stretch of countryside, her reflection staring back at her in the dark glass. Somewhere deep in her chest, she felt the first flicker of dread. Annabelle Davenport had learned long ago that revenge was not a sprint. It was a negotiation, a dance, and she had always been an excellent dancer. 3 days after the board meeting, she sat in her penthouse office, the city glittering beneath her like a kingdom she'd built from steel and glass. Richard was out, some investor lunch, or so his calendar claimed. She didn't care. She preferred it this way. The quiet moves. Her first call was to Marion Clark, their company's head of human resources, and, more importantly, an old ally. "Marion," Annabelle began, her voice warm but clipped. "I'm implementing a restructuring in the executive office, effective immediately." Marion didn't ask why. She'd been in the company long enough to know that when Annabelle spoke in that tone, resistance was not an option. Within hours, Chloe Sterling's position as Senior Strategy Advisor was dissolved. The title was gone from the company directory, replaced with consultant, contract basis. On paper, it was a harmless change. In reality, it meant Chloe had lost her executive privileges, her company credit card, her access to certain meetings, her direct approval authority on projects. Annabelle didn't even have to be in the same room to start stripping her influence away. The dinner invitation that evening, Annabelle attended a private dinner for elite tech investors. Richard wasn't invited. She made sure of it. She arrived in a black silk dress, diamonds glinting at her ears, her presence commanding the room before she even reached the table. Conversations paused as she passed. Over wine, she spoke of innovation pipelines and board vision. But underneath the jargon, she wove a subtle narrative. The kind investors always listened to more than they admitted. "Companies need steady leadership," she said, smiling faintly. "We can't afford distractions in times like these." She didn't name Richard. She didn't have to. Whispers would do the work for her. By the end of the night, 2 major stakeholders had agreed to schedule private meetings with her, without informing her husband. The unseen audience, later, in the quiet of her home library. Annabelle poured herself a glass of wine and reviewed the internal security footage from last month, something she'd discreetly had IT copy for her. There they were, Richard and Chloe, in her office, her sanctuary. The clip wasn't explicit, but it didn't need to be. his hand on her waist, her laugh, intimate, familiar. Annabelle watched once, then stored the file on an encrypted drive. She didn't need to use it yet. Timing was everything. She closed her laptop and looked out over the city. Soon, she whispered. The phone call the next morning. Richard walked into the office late. He looked frustrated, distracted. Annabelle's phone rang just as he passed her door. She answered. Annabelle, it's Victor Chen. Just a courtesy call. Richard pitched a funding expansion to us yesterday, but, well, I thought I should tell you, we're not biting. Not without your signature on the deal. Her lips curved. I understand completely, Victor. Thank you for your discretion. When she hung up, she felt it, the first crack in Richard's control. He didn't even know he was losing ground. The plan in motion by Friday, Annabelle had Chloe reassigned to a satellite office to oversee a special project. Richard had no idea the project didn't exist. And when Annabelle walked into the glass boardroom for the next weekly meeting, she took her seat at the head of the table, Richard's seat, and no one objected. It wasn't time for the final blow yet, but the first strike had landed, and Annabelle Davenport had every intention of making the next one hurt. Annabelle had learned something from years of building empires with Richard Davenport. Men like him didn't crumble under direct attack. They unraveled when you handed them the rope and let them hang themselves. So she planned a rope, a golden, glittering, irresistible rope. The perfect invitation 2 weeks after quietly pushing Chloe out of the main office. Annabelle sent out invitations for a Tech Visionaries Networking Gala, an exclusive event under the Davenport name. Every major player in the industry would be there. CEOs, media heads, venture capital giants, politicians, and journalists who lived for the scent of scandal. The invitation came from Annabelle's office. The venue was the Davenport Tower rooftop ballroom. The guest list hand-picked, and the co-host, Richard Davenport. She knew him well enough to predict his reaction. He would see it as his opportunity to prove he was still the face of the empire. He would wear his charm like armor. He would need Chloe at his side. And that was exactly what Annabelle wanted. The baton, the night of the gala. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and gold-rimmed champagne flutes. The skyline stretched in every direction, a silent audience to the gathering of power below. Annabelle arrived. Early, draped in midnight blue silk, her hair swept back to reveal diamond drop earrings that caught every glint of light. She was calm, unhurried, the very image of a woman in full control. When Richard entered, tall and confident in a tailored suit, Chloe trailed behind him in a dress that screamed new money, ambition. Annabelle didn't greet her. She didn't have to. Instead, she moved through the room like a current, speaking with investors, slipping small, precise truths into conversations. Richard's been pushing some bold ideas lately. I worry they're risky. Chloe, oh yes, she's still with us, in a different capacity now. Not accusations, not rumors, just seeds. The public slips the night deepened. Annabelle ensured Richard and Chloe were surrounded by journalists. She even accidentally placed them near a table with a live microphone from a tech podcast doing interviews. One drink too many, and Richard began talking about a confidential partnership deal, something still under NDA. Chloe laughed, leaning in close, adding her own insider details. They didn't notice the small red recording light on the microphone, but Annabelle did. The soft blade. She didn't confront them that night. No, she congratulated Richard on a brilliant speech and even posed for photographs with him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Every flash of the camera captured the image of unity. But later, when she stepped into her private study, she had the recording sent to her encrypted drive, right next to the security footage from her office. She now had two pieces of leverage: proof of inappropriate conduct in the workplace, proof of Richard breaching confidentiality at a public event. Either one could ruin him. Together, they could destroy him. The chessboard shifts the next morning. Richard found himself locked out of a high-level investor call. By noon, Chloe received an email that her consultancy contract was under review. Neither suspected Annabelle. Hand in it. From her office window, Annabelle watched the clouds rolling in over the city. She sipped her coffee slowly. She wanted Richard to watch his empire collapse in real time. Every boardroom, every investor call, every news headline slowly slipping from his grasp until there was nowhere left for him to stand. The boardroom stormed the Davenport Technologies. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Richard arrived, looking confident. He had spent the past week trying to charm nervous investors, assuring them his leadership was unshakable. Annabelle was already there, not just in her seat, but at the head of the table. He froze for only a second before masking it with a smile. "Annabelle, you're early," he said. She gestured gracefully. "Please, sit. We have important matters to discuss." On the large screen, she cued to video files. The board members leaned forward, sensing weight in the air. First, security footage. Chloe slipping into Annabelle's private office after hours, searching through files. Second, the gala recording Richard and Chloe laughing, openly revealing confidential project details to a live microphone. Silence swallowed the room. Annabelle let it linger. Then she said, her voice cool as glass, "This is the leadership your shareholders are trusting with billions in assets." The Kutha chairman of the board, a man who had once been Richard's staunchest ally, cleared his throat. "Richard, these allegations are extremely serious. Coupled with our current financial exposure," Richard shot to his feet, "this is a smear campaign." "You think I'd betray Annabelle?" cut in, her tone a razor. "I think you've been doing it for months. And now I'm giving this board a choice. Vote to remove him as CEO today, or watch the press get both of these files in the next 24 hours. The board didn't hesitate. By a majority vote, Richard Davenport was removed as CEO effective. Immediately the press strike that afternoon, Annabelle made her move public. Standing before a wall of cameras, she announced Richard's removal for breach of fiduciary responsibility and ethical misconduct, framing the decision as a commitment to transparency and corporate integrity. The media swarmed. Phrases like "fall from grace" and "corporate betrayal" hit the headlines within hours. Richard, blindsided, was photographed leaving the Davenport Tower with no security detail. His tie loose, his expression a mix of rage and disbelief. Chloe, she, vanished from the public eye, though Annabelle knew she was still in the city, hiding the personal reckoning later that night. In the silence of her penthouse, Annabelle poured herself a glass of red wine. For the first time in months, she could hear the city without the constant thrum of Richard's chaos. She didn't feel victory, not yet, because this wasn't about taking him down from the company. This was about taking him down everywhere. Her phone buzzed. A single message from her private investigator. "We found what you asked for, and it's worse than you thought." Annabelle leaned back in her chair, a slow, dangerous smile forming. Richard thought losing his position was the worst. That could happen. He was about to find out. She was only halfway done. Annabelle didn't believe in luck. She believed in timing, and timing, she knew, was a weapon. The private investigator's folder sat in front of her, sealed in plain brown paper. She had stared at it for hours before opening it, almost savoring the moment. Inside were bank records, offshore accounts, falsified invoices, proof that Richard had been moving millions from Davenport Technologies into shell companies under Chloe's name. The same Chloe who Annabelle discovered had also been using Annabelle's personal charity as a cover for laundering funds. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. It was federal crime. The quiet trigger instead of storming in with accusations. Annabelle went quiet. She sent copies of the files, neatly organized and cross-referenced, to 3 places at once. The Financial Crimes Investigation Bureau, the top 3 investigative journalists in the city, her family's private legal team. Then she waited. It didn't take long. The first headline hit within 48 hours. Former Davenport CEO, under criminal investigation for financial fraud. Richard tried to dismiss it as media harassment, but that same evening, government agents walked into his penthouse with a warrant. The public evisceration. The trial wasn't immediate, but the coverage was relentless. Every news channel replayed footage of Richard being escorted out of his building, face pale, jaw tight, avoiding the cameras. Chloe was subpoenaed as a witness. Annabelle made sure she was photographed arriving at court alone, without Richard by her side. Whispers turned into open discussions. She had cut him loose to save herself. It was the perfect ending to their alliance, to people who had tried to destroy Annabelle, turning on each other to survive. The social death, but Annabelle didn't just ruin his career and legal standing. She ruined his access. She called every social contact, every charity board, every elite host in the city, quietly, letting them know that associating with Richard would reflect poorly on their reputations. Invitations stopped coming. His name vanished from guest lists. People who had once toasted him now crossed the street to avoid him. The last meeting weeks later, she saw him one last time. It wasn't planned. Fate simply placed them in the same upscale cafe. He looked thinner, older, the kind of man who had lost the certainty that he belonged anywhere. "Are you happy now?" he asked, voice bitter. Annabelle took a sip of her coffee. "I'm not happy, Richard. I'm done." She stood, her heels clicking on marble as she walked past him. At the door, she paused just long enough to add, "You built an empire with my hands. You destroyed it with your own." Aftermath. Within months, Richard's assets were frozen. His properties were sold. The man who once owned half the skyline was renting a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where no one recognized him. Annabelle. She rebuilt Davenport Technologies, stronger than before, but now, under her name alone, the company's stock soared. Her public image transformed from silent partner to visionary leader. And as for Chloe, she left the city quietly. No one knew where she went. Annabelle didn't care. She hadn't just won. She had erased Richard Davenport from the world they once ruled together. ChatGPT.